So happy to be joined by Stanley Cup champion Markus Naslund, who will be auctioning off his 1986-1987 Montreal Canadiens game-worn captain's jersey, along with his 1980 Winter Olympics bronze medal. Mats, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
That's good. And I mentioned it off the top, they're going to be auctioning off some pretty prized possessions. How did this all come together with you linking up with Quebec Classic Auctions?
Well, Mark, I guess, asked me 2 or 3 years back if I was interested in selling some stuff, and all of a sudden they showed up in Malmö, and he wanted to see what I had to offer. And I went to the basement pretty much. I did found a few shirts and Olympic bronze medal from Lake Placid, and he said he would like to try to sell them in an auction. I said that's okay, because they just collecting dust over here. So
That's great. Yeah, put it to good use. I'm sure someone will love to get that.
yeah.
I know we're going back a ways, but what do you remember about that Stanley Cup run? Very impressive victory for the Montreal Canadiens.
86. Well, it was a great year. We almost did not make the playoff. We had to fight to make the playoff, and then all of a sudden, especially Bob Gainey took charge and got the team together, and everything was working out for us in the playoffs. We had the Patrick Roy coming up from Sherbrooke team, and Claude Lemieux too came up from the Sherbrooke team, and we turned it around. We had experience with Larry and Bob Gainey, and we had the new guys with Patrick and so on. So it was a good mix in the team, and we were lucky. All the other teams played 5 or 7 games, and we were cruising along after the tough first couple of rounds. So I thought we had a good chance to win when we saw we're going to play the final against Calgary.
You had an interesting nickname throughout your career. The English version is the Little Viking, but in French it's Le Petit Viking. I believe you got that from Mario Tremblay. What was the story behind that? It has to do obviously with your size.
Yeah, I really don't know where it came up. I know we did a cover of the Canadiens magazine for the games, and they some smart guy thought I should dress up as a Viking because, everybody knows that Vikings came from Sweden and Norway. So I got dressed up as a Viking, and after that, not too many people call me the Petit Viking, but especially Serge Savard and Raymond Bourque always called me the Petit Viking. So I think I like the Petit Viking better than the Little Viking.
Right. It sounds cooler, actually. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it sounds cooler.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Well, and that brings me to my next question. We've seen a lot of smaller players have really great NHL careers like yourself. How much did that drive you throughout your career, where I'm sure you were told at certain points you are too small to be in the league or anything like that? How much did that drive you?
I probably heard that behind my back all since I started to play hockey. But my son always laughs at me when I tell him the story that one of the TV media asked me how it felt to be small, and I was kind of pissed off, and I said, I don't know how it feels to be big, so what would I know?
Right.
But I always been small. I always had respect for bigger guys, but I was never afraid of the bigger guys, so I had no choice. I had to work hard for it.
How much hockey do you watch right now as far as NHL hockey? Do you keep up with it?
I keep up with the scores. First thing I do in the morning is look at the scores, what the Habs did, of course, and then the games are in the middle of the night, and I'm still working a little bit as a carpenter, so I have to get my 6-7 hours sleep. So,
Yeah.
but I follow the Habs, and I hope they will turn it around to become a successful team again.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We talk about smaller players. Their head coach, Martin St. Louis, had a very decorated career as one of the players that persevered and became one of the greats. What do you make of Montreal's rebuild? I know it's going a bit slow, but they have a really good system of players and coaching. Things are looking on the up.
Well, I think they have a young team, a team that can, in 2 or 3 years, be a contender for the Stanley Cup. But I think everybody has to be patient, and I hope they don't wear out the coach, because Martin is having a tough time, I guess, and they have to be patient with him too. I think if they get the Russian guy that is really good in the Russian league over in a couple of years, they have a promising team. But the next step is tough to take. But I hope every day they will do a successful job.
Will you be watching the Four Nations face-off? Obviously, Sweden's involved with the U.S. and Canada, the tournament that they have going on next year.
I'll be there as a host for a Swedish travel agency, so I will watch the games in Montreal, and I go to Boston and watch a couple of games there.
Oh, cool.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and Sweden's going to have a really strong team, especially, I think a well-rounded group. They got to be considered one of the favorites, I would think.
Well, I think all the teams, depending on how they're doing that day in the games, they can beat everybody. I mean, I think Finland can win. I think Sweden can win. US can win. Canada can win. It depends on lucky bouncers, power plays, and all that things we used to talk about. But it's going to be an interesting tournament, and we will see the best hockey players in the world competing against each other.
I guess the only disappointing part is no Russia, no Czechia in this tournament. Does that kind of take some shine off the tournament just because we aren't seeing all the best players in there?
Well, I don't know if you can say that. Doesn't matter what opinion you are. You miss Russia in all kind of sports.
That's true. Yeah, for sure.
I don't take an opinion on that, but it's like when I won the Olympic gold in Lillehammer, the best teams were not there because they played in the NHL. So if you want to have a true value of the best teams in the world, you have to have everybody there. That's the fact.
Yeah. I got to ask, I live in Vancouver, and obviously the Vancouver Canucks, one of their best players is Elias Petterson. Do you watch him at all? He's a very talented player for the Canucks from Sweden.
Yeah, I know. He came from the same team as I did in
oh, cool.
Timrå. Yeah, we played our youth hockey in Timrå, and I know him very well. He's a very talented guy. He's not a physical player, and a lot of scouts had their doubt about his physical status, but he's doing good. He knows where that top corner is in the net, so he's going to have 5, 6, 7 more years, great years. He's a good hockey player.
Yeah, and I think one of the things he doesn't get enough credit for is his defensive play. We know he can score goals, but coming back and helping on the defensive side, it makes him a pretty valuable player on that team to be able to do both, get a lot of goals, and also come back and play defense.
Oh yeah, he knows the game. You put him anywhere, he can play the game. He's not just a sniper. He's an all-around player, and I enjoy watching him when I have a chance.
I got to ask this. I'm sure you've been asked this before, but how annoyed do you get when people ask if you're related to Markus Naslund?
I'm okay if they ask me if I'm related, but when they ask me if I'm his father, I tell them to fuck off.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're not that old, Nats. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Have you ever met Markus Naslund before, though? I wanted to know that.
Yeah, I know Markus very well. I played some aluminum hockey with him, and I played in the national team when he was 18. He was actually in the national team before Peter Forsberg was. So I know Markus very well. Yeah, and it was pretty cool to see his career. Obviously, for those who don't know, high draft pick to the Penguins. They got rid of him maybe a bit early. Struggled a little bit early on with Vancouver, but then became one of the most dominant players in the league. That must have been cool to see as a fellow Swede, to see him have a lot of success when it seemed like there wasn't a lot of expectations at one time. Yeah, there wasn't. I guess they were disappointed in Pittsburgh, but you had a lot of great Swedish players in Vancouver, and I think most underrated player you have is probably Patrick Sandstrom.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. He doesn't get talked about enough either. Yeah. What do you make as well of, speaking of Vancouver, all the Swedish connections? You have the Sedins, who are obviously involved in the organization. Their general manager from Sweden, Patrick Alvin. Did you kind of notice that there's a lot of Swedish connections with the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, I know. It's been like that since when I was there, when they had Lars Molin, Thomas Gardin, Lars Lindgren. Everybody was connected to Sweden, so I'm pretty sure that's why they got a lot of Swedish players still there. Tiger Williams was not Swedish, but he was a special kind of guy.
That he was, yes, good point. And my last question, you kind of alluded to it there. You said you're doing some carpentry work. What are you doing these days? What's keeping you busy?
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing not 40 hours a week, but whatever I have, 20, 25 hours. As long as my body allows me to keep working, I like to do it. I don't like to go to the gym, so I like to work instead.
Me either. I appreciate it. Mats, thank you so much for doing this. If there's anything you'd like to mention before we leave the interview, I will give you the last word.
Well, I appreciate my 8 years in Montreal. I had a great time, and especially this parade at the St. Catherine Street with 1 million people. And I still get recognized when I get there. So for my self-confidence, it's nice to get back to Montreal every once in a while.